Hello, sweet friends. Welcome back to the book annotation series on my channel. I have been having such a great time making these videos as part of this series. Annotating books is one of my favorite cozy hobbies. It's such an enriching and fun experience to get that close and deep with a book and to just love on it a little bit more. And yeah, I've just been having a really great time. I hope that you have been picking up some tips and tricks for your own annotating process, or if you just enjoy the vibes of someone reading out loud and annotating on camera. I hope this series has given you something and something that you look forward to seeing on my channel. As always, if you are new to either my channel or annotating books or this series, I always say start with my very first Annotating 101 video. This video has everything you need to know about how to get started with annotating books. It is a very, very beginner friendly step-by-step guide that shows you the differences with all the annotation techniques, like underlining versus highlighting versus writing in the margins, using brackets, supplies to use, what books are good to start with annotating, all sorts of stuff. So if you're brand new to this whole concept of annotating books or this series on my channel, I would recommend starting with that Annotating 101 video and then diving into some of these live sessions. But in these videos where I do a live annotation, I just jump right in and we start annotating the book that we're reading today. As always, thank you so much for watching and supporting this series, and let's just jump right into our book today. The book I am annotating today is Powerful. This is the novella that comes after Powerless. So the caveat I will give is that there aren't many spoilers in the couple of chapters that I'm about to annotate, but just in case there is a sentence or two that gives anything away about the first book, I just wanted to give a fair warning. If you have not read Powerless, then maybe you may not want to watch this annotation if you don't want to be spoiled for any single plot point. But I'm pretty sure the first couple of chapters that I'm about to annotate don't give away much. Maybe there's a sentence or two, but I don't think it's anything that's not already on the back blurb of Powerless. So there's not much risk for a lot being given away, but just in case if you're really sensitive to that and you don't want to know anything about Powerless, then this video might not be the one to watch. I have 3 annotation supplies here in front of me. I have a set of tabs. I have one fine point pen. It's a Sharpie S-Gel 0.38. It's really good for writing tiny, tiny notes in the margins. I also have one highlighter from Mr. Pen. This is in the shade kind of like a sage green. What I typically like to do is turn to the title page and add in my tab system there. As I've mentioned in all my other annotation series videos, is that I have the same color coding system for all of my books. It helps me kind of keep things straight so that no matter what book I flip to, I know that the red is always going to be sweet and romantic moments, the blue is sad, and so on and so forth. It's just the system that I have found over the years has really helped me not rethink things a million times, not get reoriented every time I come to a new book that I'm annotating. It just helps my brain kind of stay a little simplified and keeps things pretty easy, and I don't have to spend a lot of time kind of reinventing the wheel and coming up with a new system every time. Now, this is the system that's worked so far. I may evolve it in the future, but for now, it's not broken, so why fix it? So what I typically start with is a red tab for anything that is sweet or romantic or endearing. So I'm going to put romantic / sweet. Then I will use a yellow tab for quotes. I am a big quotes girly. I love referencing them. I love sharing them, writing them in my journal. So I love picking out really good quotes. I then use a green tab for any plot related items. So I'm going to put that there and then write plot. Then I like to use a blue tab for anything that is sad or emotional. And this book definitely has those moments. And then I will also use a purple tab for any character related items. So I'll put character traits for this one. So those are the 5 categories that I will use a standard across most of my books, whether it's a romance or fantasy or nonfiction is a whole different set, but if it's a fiction, women's fiction, mystery, thriller, all that kind of stuff, this is the system that I will use for all of my fiction books. And the reason I wanted to read Powerful is because a lot of you have asked for me to annotate some fantasy books, and I thought this one would be a nice kind of ease into a fantasy romantasy world by doing a little novella and a story that most of us really love. So I thought this would be a nice start to dive into that romantasy world of annotations. To the girls with softer dreams, your purpose is just as powerful. How sweet is that? And if you've read Powerless, then you know that this book is about Adina, and she is such a beloved character, and she is one of those softer girls with softer dreams, and I just love that so much. How sweet. So sometimes I will add a few little doodles to make my books a little bit whimsical, and I will from time to time use colorful pens as well, maybe some little glitter items to add that little bit of extra charm. Prologue, Adina, 5 years ago. The biggest man I've ever seen is barreling behind me. Then again, it is likely that I'm exaggerating. Mama always did tell me what a curse it is to be blessed with such an overactive imagination. I would hate to proclaim that he's the largest man I've ever seen if he isn't truly worthy of the title. So I dare a glance over my shoulder, dodging carts and jutting cobblestone beneath the boots swallowing my feet. Mama said I would grow into them. I'm still waiting for that day. No, that is definitely a giant man. The white mask he wears leaves the bottom half of his face exposed, displaying red cheeks and a twisted scowl between each panted breath. A tangled strand of hair whips me in the face when I turn back toward the street sprawled before me. Several curls crawl into my mouth when a rare gust of wind decides to rush down Loot Alley on its way to somewhere far more important. What a beautiful description that is. I'm going to underline that. I am a fan of like poetic lyrical writing, but only to a certain point. I don't like when it gets too poetic and it's hard to understand what they're describing. But I love the way that this was written. It says several curls crawl into my mouth when a rare gust of wind decides to rush down Loot Alley on its way to somewhere far more important. And oftentimes you'll see in my annotation system that I will underline something that stands out to me and that I enjoy while I'm reading, but I'm not necessarily going to use a tab or write anything in the margins. It's just something that I'm enjoying while I'm reading, but not necessarily something that I want to reference back when I'm flipping through this book in the future or looking for clues or just like, you know, wanting to see where things were happening that led to something else. The tabs are really a reference system, so something that you know you're going to want to go back to in the future and go back to that exact moment. That is when you would use a tab. But for now, this is just something I'm enjoying while I'm reading, and I'm just underlined it without any other annotation. I lift a hand to swipe at the unruly strands, only to be reminded of the very reason I'm running from an imperial in the first place. Honey oozes between my fingers, dripping lazily from the sticky bun squished in my palm. What a beautiful way to describe what is happening. One of my favorite things that an author can do is show you rather than tell you without the literal, she stole a sticky bun. Instead of saying it just like that, I love the way she's painted this picture, which is her gazing down at her hand. There's honey oozing between her fingers. It's just so imaginative and it's descriptive, and it helps the audience, the reader, kind of put these things together themselves and use a bit of our own imagination rather than just literally being told she stole something or she stole this sticky bun. So I'm going to write that here with a bracket and write, love the way this is shown rather than told. And that is something I have found that Lauren Roberts does really well. She's a big shower and not a big teller, and it just makes the writing a lot more fun, a lot more interactive, helps the reader kind of engage their own brain cells to put a couple of things together. So I really like that. And you'll notice with me, with bracketing, I describe this more in my Annotating 101 video if you want more detail. But what I typically do is, when there's not something specific I want to underline, or if there's too much I want to underline, I will just use a bracket system to write my note next to it rather than going through and picking out the exact one line that might be standing out or that might be telling me about this. And then there's other times when there's so many things I want to underline that, nothing is going to stick out. In that case, a bracket would be good as well. I might have gotten away with my first attempt at thievery if it weren't for the fact that I tripped into the very stand I tried to steal from. That is so adorably Adina, isn't it? She is such a likable character. She's kind of like that clumsy, like just kind of whimsical, fun, cheery girl. I just love that. Again, something I enjoyed, but not something I necessarily want to tab, but I will write here, so adorably Adina. And if you are new to this series, the reason I know that about Adina is because she does obviously make an appearance in Powerless, the first book in the series. So I know a little bit about her and her backstory. And so reading the novella now, it kind of makes sense with all of these like tiny little character traits that happen. I can pick them out and describe them as, adorably Adina, because we have gotten to know her in that first book. Unfortunately, it only got worse from there. I then profusely apologized for stealing before spinning on my heel and running off. This got the merchant's attention, then the Imperials, and now everyone on the market street is bearing witness to the scene I'm causing. It's not as though the Imperial or the king he serves care about the overcooked dough I sloppily stole. No, it's the example that he is chasing, the spectacle I will become at the bloody post in the center of loot. Imperials like their whips, and I like my sticky buns, and for some reason, the starving girl is in the wrong. Isn't that absolutely what's wrong with the world? Just, it is a tale as old as time, the clashes between the rich and the poor, and those in power and those not in power, and, the ones struggling for some reason always seem to get the short end of the stick. I'm just going to write a little sentence here that says, isn't that just the crux of what is wrong in the world? Somehow those most in need always come out the wrong end. Men, women, and wandering children jump out of my path, though most look unfazed by the sight of me hurtling past. Looting on loot is hardly uncommon. Merchants curse as I weave between their carts, though I shout my apologies at anyone who cares to accept them. That's so sweet. This may be the most terrifying thing I've ever done. I mean, attempting to sew a pleated skirt was certainly a daunting task, but the threat that pointy needles pose likely pales in comparison to what this Imperial has in store for me. I glance down at the sticky bun that is in fact feeling like its name suggests. What has gotten into me? I shout an apology to the woman scurrying out of the way, likely swallowed up by the sound of her cursing my name. Hunger, That's what has gotten into me. But I don't particularly like being cursed at. In fact, if most of the people yelling in my direction actually got to know me, I'm sure I would make a completely respectable impression under different circumstances. Isn't that most of us? I mean, it's just so easy and very like us humans. It's human nature. And, you know, even on a subconscious level, just to judge someone as soon as we see them, you know, whether that's by their clothing or what state they're in or how they speak or what their hair looks like, until they open their mouth and they tell us their story. And then we are very quick to drop those judgments and empathize with people. But that initial judgment never goes away until, you know, someone really opens their mouth and tells us their story. So I understand this, Adina. I'm just going to write here, easy to judge. Until we know someone's story. And don't we all have one? Hair flinging over a shoulder, I peek at my giant pursuer. Face still as red as ever, he charges persistently. Well, he's definitely not a Flash, that's for certain. So I guess that's referencing the magic in this world. When my head swivels back toward the street, it's glinting silver that catches my eye. The girl stands in my path, staring curiously at the scene sprinting toward her. Silver hair spills from her head, pouring down her back. And if I make it out of this unscathed, I'm determined to find a fabric of the same shimmering shade. I admire her hair until it is suddenly right in front of me. She hasn't moved, and I'm not planning on slowing down. So without a second thought, I run right into her. I love that because this is, of course, going to be our other female main character. And again, you know, in Powerless, we learn a lot about their relationship. And so the significance of this is, so without a second thought, I run right into her. I love that their dramatic impact upon meeting almost symbolizes and signifies the impact they'll have on each other's lives. So that's what I'm going to write here. It says, so fitting for the impact. It's like kind of a double entendre play on the word impact. So fitting for the impact they'll have on each other. Little heart doodle. And I think here I am going to use my plot point tab, the purple tab, because this is significant. This is where our two characters meet. And so, you know, to me, that is something that I'd like to remember when I'm flipping back and looking at, okay, how did they meet? When did they meet? What was that first, you know, beautiful moment between them? Then this is what a plot tab would be used for. Now, these tabs are interesting. I've never really used the curved ones. What I typically use is the ones with the straight edge because I like all my tabs sticking out at the same length. I don't like them coming out at all various different lengths out of the book. So with this one, what I would typically do is stick it out as far as I would like and then press it down, but we need to be able to see a little bit of the color. So I think maybe I will stick it out like a fourth of the circle out. And hopefully that doesn't look too bad when the book is shut. So I guess I'll just have a bunch of tabs like that, which might be kind of interesting. Well, technically, I run right through her. I phase when our bodies meet, feeling nothing as I pass through her body to the other side of the open street. So I guess that is a form of her magic. So I'm just going to underline that here. The other side of the open street. How fun would that be if you could just like run right through people? It's so interesting. I don't need another plot point tab here because I already have one from above. And if I'm already flipping to this and reading this, typically my eyes will scan down further and look to what's next as well. And so I don't really need another tab. And I don't dare look back until I hear a heavy thud hit the cobblestones behind me. I barely catch the Imperial's face hitting the stones before the girl is bounding behind me. "Don't stop," she shouts, not bothering to fight the smile pulling at her lips. All I can manage is a breathless laugh in response as I focus on forcing my tired legs faster. I love that so much because isn't that just so typically Peyton? She is going to jump right in without even knowing really what's going on, but it is so like her to want to just jump in and help. So I'm going to say so like Peyton to join right in. I love that. Also, how sweet for their first encounter, you know, just getting all this backstory on how they actually met and developed this beautiful friendship. And I love that they literally just ran into each other and became thick as thieves in an instant. We run until she yanks me down a narrow alley, dodging the huddled homeless. "This way," she orders, continuing to tug on my arm. It's only after slinking down several shadowed alleyways that we allow ourselves to lean against a grimy brick wall, gulping down equally dusty air. She looks over at me, and I look over at her. Something like understanding seems to settle between us, and as though loneliness has found its equal. Oh, that's a beautiful sentiment. So here what I'm going to do is underline that because I really like that, the way that that has been described. And here I'm going to utilize my double technique, which is that I usually save highlighting for direct quotes. Again, if you want more detail on my system, visit that Annotating 101 video. But like I said, typically I will save my highlighting for direct quotes, but there will be times that I underline something and highlight something because it is that significant and I want it to stand out a little bit more on the page. So when I am flipping through, this is likely where my eyes are going to fall first. And that's exactly what I want to happen because I love that sentence, you know, as though loneliness has found its equal. That's just so powerful and I really, really like it. So I want it to stand out all that much more. And in this case, I will use a yellow quotes tab because which yellow did we use? The dark or the light? We used the darker yellow. And I'm going to stick it out that 1/4 and then press down this way. So always stick it out as much as you want and then press down backwards so you can make sure that they are all lined up. If that's something that's important to you, drives my OCD mind crazy, so I like having them at the same length. The girl raises her eyebrows at the sticky bun still gripped in my hand. "First time stealing?" "That obvious," I smile sheepishly. She shrugs. "You would think a phaser would be better at escaping." "See," I sigh, "that's what I thought. And look at where it got me." There is a stretch of silence before I blurt, "Oh, and I'm not really sure what you did back there, but thanks for your help." She flashes a smile. "Nothing difficult, just stuck my foot out. It's the Imperial's fault for running into it, really." We laugh. It's nice, this brief moment of companionship. The warmth coats my chest when I giggle for the first time in a long while, for the first time since Mama. Oh, that is very sweet. You know, there are just some of those people that you meet in life that you do kind of have that like instant connection with. There may not be a rhyme or reason, and for some reason there are people that you just click with. As soon as you meet them, as soon as you open your mouth, you say a sentence or two and you just know that this person is going to be significant. My best friend and I met that way in London when I moved there. I just knew the second he opened his mouth and we shared that first little laugh that we were going to be in each other's lives for a very long time, and I just find that so sweet. So I'm actually going to use the red tab here. For me, the red tab, you know, is anything romantic or sweet. And so it doesn't always have to be in that romantic sense. It can be a platonic version of sweet. It's just moments that I really enjoy that kind of warm my heart, that give me those little fun butterfly, warm and fuzzy feelings. And so I'm going to put a red tab here because I find that to just be so charming and lovely. I raise the sticky bun between us. Want a split? She laughs again when I wave the dough between her nose. What, with your sweat all over it? Oh, this is nothing, I say, the words muffled by the bite I take. I've sweat more while trying to stitch up a corset. She looks absolutely distraught at that statement. Why would you ever need a corset? Unfortunately, I sigh wistfully, I wouldn't, but richer people do. She blinks at me, something brewing behind her blue eyes. You sell clothes? My eyes skim down the dirtied shirt hanging from her shoulder to land on the pants bunched at her boots. Yeah, and it looks like you could certainly use some. Oh my goodness, I love their back and forth banter. They've literally just met and they feel so comfortable kind of giving each other little jabs like that. And again, what a wonderful sign of meeting somebody that you feel right at home with, that feels like, you know, they won't judge you. They're not going to, you know, take it the wrong way, that you can just fall into such an easy banter with. That is just actually such a sign of a beautiful friendship. I'm going to write here how lovely they've just fallen into. Such an easy flow so quickly. And you'll notice I write a lot in the margins. I love writing my reactions. I love, you know, chuckling at something, writing something that's sweet, maybe something that connects to me as the reader. I will make a lot of notes in the margins, and that's why I always use a really fine point pen, because you don't get a lot of space, whether it's a hard book or a paperback. And so having that really fine point helps a lot. And one of the best things about writing in the margins I found is when I do go back and I flip through my annotated books, it's almost like I'm stepping back in time and I can enjoy that book with the version of me that read it. Because as we all know, you know, life goes through different seasons, whether you are in a happy season, a sad season, whatever it might be. When you annotate a book in that specific season, it's almost like you can experience that part of your life again, that version of you again. And it's like meeting old parts of yourself again. And isn't that just such a beautiful sentiment? So that's one of the reasons I absolutely love annotating books, is, you know, to preserve and look at those old versions of me in a really beautiful way. I run a hand down her sleeve, feeling the coarse fabric rubbing against her skin. No, this won't do at all. Stealing food is kind of my priority at the moment, she grumbles. Excitement bubbles up my throat in the form of a hushed shout. You steal? Like steal good? Steal good? She echoes skeptically. Well, whatever I just did was bad. She is quick to nod in agreement. So can you do what I did, but like good? Anything is better than that, she says with an amused smile. But yes, I steal good. Perfect, I say cheerily before sticking out the hand currently unoccupied with my stolen goods. I'm Adina. She takes my hand, seemingly shaking it just to humor me. I'm Peyton. Well, Peyton? I rip the sticky bun in half, offering a smushed side to her. I think we could make a great team. She pops a piece of dough into her mouth. So you sew and I steal? We share the money and the food? Exactly. I hesitate for a moment. I mean, unless you have somewhere better to go than the slums. Not anymore, she says a bit too quickly. So partners? Partners. Oh, that's beautiful. I'm going to highlight that word partner. So this is how I would typically use a highlighter, is for a direct quote. And I don't have much to say here. This is self-explanatory. So I'm just going to add a few sweet little doodles. This is when I guess they solidify their little partnership to work together and help each other survive in this crazy world that they're in. I smile before looking down the length of her, and my first order of business is getting you into something far less horrendous. She huffs out a laugh. Yeah, because that's a priority. I take another bite of sticky bun, humming at the sweet honey melting on my tongue. And your first order of business, I mumble between bites, is getting me more of these. Oh, what a wonderful start to this little novella. We've already kind of quoted and tabbed and highlighted several things about their meeting and encounter. This story, this series is one of my absolute favorites. I've read the other three and annotated all of those. This one was left, and this is just bringing me back to all those warm and fuzzy kind of cozy feelings I had when I annotated the other three, and I'm just having such a great time. Typically at the end, I think this is the end of the chapter, yeah. Typically at the end of the chapter, I will put an open and close bracket and just write some of my thoughts out about what I'm reacting to with the chapter or anything that's happened at the end. I think I don't have anything particular to write right now, so I will skip that for this portion. We'll see if the next chapter has something I want to write. But that is a good tip to keep in mind, is to write more extensive thoughts at the end of the chapter. Typically, chapters will end here, or, you know, somewhere shorter, and you'll have a lot more space to write a lot more of your reactions and kind of how you're feeling about the book so far. Chapter 1, Mikado. Her name is on a list of the dead. I squint in the stinging sunlight, scrutinizing every name inked onto the banner. Hers sits among the 8 others, likely overlooked beneath the princes crowning the top. But despite being on the list, our future enforcer will easily evade the death awaiting the other contestants, because these trials were made for elites like him, not elites like her. Interesting. I'm going to underline that part. It kind of reiterates the messaging of what's happened in the first book, just this world where it is elites against everyone else, and that just kind of, you know, solidifies that whole messaging that there's a them and an us. My eyes skim over the list once again, recognizing no other names. I've never been one to keep up with what elites manage to wrangle enough relevance to make it into the trials. A shoulder collides with mine, followed by several other limbs pushing against me. Loot is swimming with sticky bodies and echoing shouts of celebration, further adding to the list of reasons why I would rather be anywhere else but the slums of Ilia. It's a struggle to push my way through the crowded street, every inch of it crawling with ignorance incarnate, every inch cheering for each contestant they chose to represent Loot. I think I'm going to underline there because this is a struggle we see even in our own society. It's one that makes me really emotional and sad, actually, you know, where he describes, it says, it struggled to push my way through the crowded street, every inch of it crawling with ignorance incarnate. And unfortunately, I think that's one of the things that those in power kind of rely on, is keeping the lower masses in ignorance so that they can continue to control them and, you know, have power over them. And I find that to be just so sad and one of the biggest issues in our society. I'm going to put a sad blue tab here because, again, that hits like a personal note for me. So this is not necessarily something that is sad specific to the story. I mean, of course, it is a sad sentiment, but the reason I put a sad blue tab is because of everything I described. This reminds me of the things going on in our world today and the struggles between, you know, those in power and those not, and how those in power kind of rely on the ignorance and keeping people in the dark. And so, you know, another thing about annotating books is that you can do it on a literal level, and so you can use the blue sad tabs to literally annotate an exact sad thing that happens. But for me, because my annotating is so personal, it is so deeply connected to my life and what I want to react to, I'm going to put a sad tab because to me, I'm relating it to something in my real world, and it gives me feelings of sadness. And so it's that deeper level of annotating that goes beyond just like the literal words and the literal plot that you're reading, and it gives that personal element and that personal connection. So I'm just going to write here, it's like, sadly, you know, how those in power keep the lower masses in poverty. Every inch cheering for each contestant they choose to represent Loot. I push through the crowd, ignoring their celebrations. They have done nothing more than send mundanes and defensive elites to their death, and she is one of them. So we're not quite sure who he's referring to yet, but clearly she's very meaningful to him. But it should be me, me who dies brutally, dies alone, dies at all. That is quite a dramatic and bold statement. So we don't know much about this main character just yet, Mikado. This is obviously in his point of view. But what this sentence does tell me is that clearly he is carrying some sort of guilt. He's carrying some sort of heavy burden because he feels like he's the one that should be kind of sent to his death. I will use a character tab here, this purple character tab, because even though we're not exactly sure of who he is and what's going on and what his backstory is, for me, using character tabs involves even any clues you get about their personality and their background. And like I said, this kind of gives me some insight into his world and his brain. It shows that, you know, he's carrying some form of guilt, some form of heaviness about this other person who has been sent into the trials and not him. And so again, later when I'm referencing or I'm looking through things and I kind of want to see how the puzzle pieces all add up about a character or the things they do, all of these little crumbs can help kind of paint that picture. So for me, it's important to mark a character tab in situations like that, where you get a little bit of a crumb. Chants in honor of the 6th ever Pershing trials ring in my ears, each word a reminder of what I've done. Nothing. I've spent my whole life huddling in her shadow, hiding from life itself, and now she has been chosen simply because she did nothing of the sort. The people knew her, loved the street magic she performed as a veil, and yet they sentenced her to death under the guise of honor. Again, isn't that just so typical, isn't it? It's like, what are the stories we are always being sold under the guise of something else? Again, another way that society kind of controls people. It's controlling the narrative. It's confusing you into thinking that something you're doing is for your country or for your people or whatever it might be in the name of honor, but actually underneath it, the plain truth is that it's wrong and it shouldn't be happening. So yeah, just kind of reiterating that sadness and that whole theme of keeping those who are less fortunate kind of further confused and further in their ignorance, and, you know, using words like honor and duty and obligation and all that just to kind of justify, you know, the end, like the means justifying the ends. She is a defensive, therefore she is dead. And I need to find her. My hands are still streaked with coal dust, leathers clinging to my sweaty body as though I'm still hammering steel over a scalding fire. I had worked through the night and was continuing still when the commotion managed to drag me from the shop. So I guess he is some sort of blacksmith or something. I should have gone to see her last night, should have been there when she found out, and now I'm shoving through a sea of people, attempting to find her before it's too late. I scan the packed street, catching sight of a coach rumbling toward the end of it. It screeches to a halt, the horses nearly as impatient as the drivers eager to escape the slums. I sure as hell know how that feels. I'm shoved forward when the congested crowd begins flocking toward the coach, crowding it as though they're offering free rides out of this shithole. Begrudgingly, I allow myself to be swept forward, managing to catch a glimpse of her climbing inside. An Imperial ushers her up the step, and in typical Hera fashion, she shyly thanks him as though he's not escorting her to her doom. So that is the character that he has been referring to. So I'm going to underline just her name there because it is the brief mention of who he has been talking about this whole time. We finally get a little bit, of an introduction to who she is, but not enough that I need a character tab because I'm literally only learning her name and maybe a slight other character trait, but nothing significant enough for me to add in the tab. Her sleek black hair is the last thing I see before she's swallowed by the four walls sitting in the belly of the coach. The world seems to quiet, slow its spinning with each shaky breath I manage. I didn't get to say goodbye. I feel like we rarely ever do. It is both true in books and in real life. I'm just going to put, we rarely ever get to. I feel like closure is one of those other kind of societal sentiments that, you know, is widely spread, and it's almost like we expect it and we, you know, feel a lot of disappointment when we don't get it, when in fact we should probably, you know, come to a state as a society and accept that closure is not always owed, it's not always given, and also it's sometimes not even necessary. So it's a weird thing, isn't it? That closure piece of things with relationships. My thumb finds the scar cutting crookedly through my lips, tracing it like I had the day my life truly became a secret. A familiar numbness begins to bleed over my body, bathing every bit of me in bitterness. I'm about to turn away, unable to watch her be paraded toward her death. That's when a flash of silver catches my eye. I peer over the dozens of heads dotting the street, watch her walk toward the coach with hair that tells me all I need to know. So this is the famous Silver Savior. Word of her saving Prince Kai managed to reach even my ears, evidence of how significant she's become among the slums. Perhaps I'm a skeptic or simply the only logical person living in the vicinity, but I'm not entirely convinced by her battle with a silencer. I'm going to underline that there because that is significant to me about his character. So he seems like he is not easily fooled, and it takes a little bit more to kind of earn his respect, you know, his agreement. So I'm just going to write here, he's not easily swayed. And I am going to write a plot point here because this is going to be significant kind of later in the book, I guess, because he has like very strong feelings, it seems, towards the Silver Savior, who is Peyton, our main character. And so I just want to write that point there. Actually, this is our character tab. I don't need a character tab. I want a plot tab, because this is really going to be talking about, yeah, his kind of encounter with Peyton. And it's interesting that he has such strong feelings, even though he hasn't quite met her, but it's an interesting one to look back on. And I know exactly what it's like to be in Kai's shoes. I'm watching her climb into the coach when a hopping figure captures my attention. Dark curls bounce with each attempt to see over the crowd. Her hands are raised, waving haphazardly at the Silver Savior. She's shouting something that looks quite heartfelt, likely a wasted goodbye that will never be heard. I lean over a pair of young women who are chanting terribly off-key to the rest of the street. Squinting, I struggle to scan the girl's face with how persistently she's bouncing. Something about her seems faintly familiar, as though this isn't the first time I've been graced by the presence of her perpetual perkiness. I roll my eyes when recognition rams into me. Oh, I know exactly who this is. In fact, I believe she even made it onto my ever-growing list of reasons to never leave my shop. That's just so funny. I smirk because I'm in a funny chapter of my life too, where I'm craving a lot of solitude. I just want to avoid like crowds and people and all the things and just kind of be in my little cozy bubble. And that just makes me chuckle because I'm always saying to my husband, oh, my happy place is my home. I just want to stay in here. I was buying supplies from a merchant who was just as eager to take my money as I was to retreat back into my glorified shed. It was with a bundle of leather tucked beneath my arm and a severe lack of pep in my step that I heard the most absurdly bubbly sales pitch. And that's when I saw her, curly hair bouncing with each energetic bob of her head, a plethora of clothing piled around her while she described what is commonly known as a blue shirt with about a dozen more words than necessary. Again, I'm just going to write here so charmingly. Adina, every description you get of her paints the exact picture I have in my mind of who she is, just this super bubbly, sweet, charming girl who, you know, just personifies like sunshine in everything she does and says, and that just kind of adds to that, doesn't it? I may have said a thing or two, though the details of our conversation were hardly interesting enough for me to waste time recalling now. That was several weeks ago now, but there is no mistaking that the girl currently waving a crazed set of hands down the street is the same seamstress who sells on the corner of an alley. And she's a phaser. I know that much about her. Well, that and her astounding ability to never tire of talking. I watch her blow kisses to the silver savior, so many that I brace myself to witness her faint. Isn't that also just so sweet of her? Adina, I feel like she's like one of those characters that just is like full of love and goodness and sunshine. And I love the way that she loves people, her people. So I'm just going to write here, love that she is not shy to pour her love so unapologetically, to those who mean a lot. I love that. I love people who just love in that very unapologetic way, and it is so pure and it is just so sweet. So I'm going to add a little red tab here just because that does kind of warm my heart. So another sweet moment between Adina and Peyton. So a little tab there. But she does nothing of the sort, leaving me to continue watching the endearing embodiment of her affections for this girl. There is no mistaking the sincerity in each flailing wave and shouted sentiment. This seamstress knows the silver savior, and quite personally by the looks of it, likely enough to do just about anything for her. Isn't that so true? Likely enough. And it's amazing that, you know, these kind of people that love so unapologetically, there's no like mistaking who they are, even to people that don't know her. So Mikado doesn't know her, but he's already picked up on the fact that she would do anything for her. And again, I just love that. I love that kind of love. My mind races recklessly, scheming. A horribly impulsive plan begins to form, one that should likely never leave the confines of my mind, let alone be executed at all. But this just might work. That is typically what one thinks right before everything goes to shit. Then again, one might argue that things couldn't possibly get any shittier. His inner dialogue is hilarious. I mean, I love the fact that he's just so dry and sarcastic and kind of one of those like grumpy grizzly bear types, but probably so cuddly and cozy on the inside. And we all have those characters in our life, and they are some of my favorite people, just, you know, rough around the edges, but when you get to know them, they're like big teddy bears. That's kind of the feeling I'm getting from Mikado, from this character. And I think it's so interesting that, you know, he's like talking about doing something so crazy, but the last sentiment, then again, one might argue that things couldn't possibly get any shittier. And you know what's interesting is like sometimes when you're at rock bottom, it's actually the time that you have the most hope, because nothing can get worse. It can only go up from there. And so it's like, why not shoot your Hail Mary shot and just take a chance? You have nothing to lose at that point. So here, this is the end of the chapter. And like I said, typically you would get more room to write, but I think because this is a novella and a bit of a smaller book, we're not getting much at the ends of the chapters, but I will squeeze in a little open bracket here where I want to write some of my thoughts. And it's that sentiment that I was just saying, which is, you know, what do you have to lose? What do you have to lose when you are already at rock bottom? Take your shot. Take your chance. I feel like a lot of us could relate to this as well. I certainly can. I have had a few moments in my life that have felt like rock bottom. And honestly, the things that got me through were knowing that it can only go up from there. You know, take a chance on something, try something new, figure something out. Just throw that Hail Mary ball and see what happens, because up is the only way you can go from there. So How very interesting. And I love that we are already getting such a vibrant picture of these two characters and what this little novella is going to be about. They already seem like they share some similarities from being from a place like Loot and being in a place of desperation. And this is so intriguing. I'm so excited to see, you know, kind of like where their relationship goes and what they could mean to each other and how they could help each other out. Yeah, so excited. And that brings us to the end of our annotation session today. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you got something out of it. I forgot how much I missed this world and the powerless characters, and it always gives me such warm and fuzzy feelings to be with these characters again. And I was just looking at the book, and I actually really like these circular tabs. I don't know if you can see, but they look kind of cool sticking out like that. And I actually also was thinking it's kind of nice to have a different tabbing system for the little novellas as compared to the main novels in this series. She has another novella coming out, I think like in a month and a half or so in September, and I will definitely be annotating that one as well, so stay tuned for that. But again, like I said with this one, you know, if you haven't read the series and you don't want spoilers, then please skip that video just in case you come across something that you didn't want to know. I also will say annotating a romantasy was interesting doing it live, because with these types of books, you don't get a lot of the plot development, a lot of the character arcs, a lot of the like main stuff until like the last 30 or 50 pages of a fantasy novel. That's like when everything kind of blows up and goes crazy. And, you know, in the beginnings of these books, they're a little bit slower to start because you get a bit more world building, a bit more background. So there's not as much as like a romance book per se. Romance books kind of just like dive in, especially the ones that I have annotated in this series. There was a lot to say about a lot of those books up front, whereas I found it interesting with a romantasy in the beginning. It's like a little slow to get going, but I'm really glad I chose this one and picked this one for the first one that I've done, because it was like a nice, like easing myself into it, like a little dipping the toe in the water. And we'll see what other books I can get to as part of this series, if it is worth doing like a bigger fantasy book or something. I know a lot of you have requested it, and I will take all of those into consideration. But I also, you know, am cognizant of the fact that some books don't really pick up until the later chapters, so there might not be many annotations to begin with. And I know a lot of you have also asked about doing more chapters of the book, but unfortunately, because of like copyright laws and other things, I can't read too much of it out loud. So that's why we typically only stick to a couple of the first chapters, but I hope it inspires you to pick up the book as well. You know, support these authors, support the publishing industry. Reading is one of my favorite things, and annotating books is like the next level up from something I love. So I hope you got something from this video and enjoyed that session. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you next time.